What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk some questions from the fan mailbag today. Some of the things that people have been asking about, some of the players that they're thinking about starting or sitting, trading, etc. from the channel. Thank you to all those who commented. And then I'm also going to talk about the less than 30% rostered guys heading into this Sunday, week 3, that you can pick up. Probably available out there, and I think would be good plays for this week if you're looking for a streamer in a pinch. So, like I've said in my previous videos, please consider subscribing to my channel. I have fantasy football content as well as a lot of other content that you can check out in the description below. So this video is going to be not as much of a full edit production as some of my other videos, as much as just answering some questions and taking a look at some of the guys that you can get last minute for this week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin a comment on each of the videos that I make, and if you ask questions there, I will answer it in these fan mailbags that come up over the weekend. So what I'll do is, if you just want to comment in there, if you have questions going into each week, or if you have questions that you want answered on this channel, then comment within the pin comment that I'm going to post on my videos. I did have an announcement on YouTube that was talking about comments that you can make, but if you didn't get a chance to see that, I probably wasn't very clear about my instructions on it, so I only got one commenter. But I did look at some comments from some of my other subscribers on the channel, and I'm going to be answering it today. So just as a heads up for future, so we can make this a forum where you guys can ask your questions, I can give you your answers, and yeah, the goal is try to win your fantasy football championships this season. Later this week, I'm going to be having a video that's going to talk about specific strategies to win your fantasy football league. So pay attention to that. But one of the ones that I want to talk about specifically from that video that's going to be coming up is the idea of checking waivers every day, checking developments, and especially if you're have a losing record, looking 1 week ahead at guys that you can stream in a pinch that can help you get that win. And I'm going to real quick just go through the positions of that before we answer some of the questions today from the fan mailbag. Of the less than 30% roster guys on ESPN that are probably still available out there in some of your leagues, and really want to take a look at that. So, for example, in one of my leagues I just saw, somebody had dropped both Cooper Kupp and Isaiah Pacheco, which is just insane. I don't know why somebody would do that. But then again, I'm in a couple of leagues, and this one is a very casual league. So I'm just saying, keep an eye out, because you never know which guys are going to get dropped. But these guys, if Cooper Kupp is available and Isaiah Pacheco is available, then there's a good chance that these guys are also available. All right. So the less than 30% roster guys that I like, I'm going to start at the quarterback. I did talk a little bit about Sam Darnold in my last video, so you can take a look at that. But I do think that Sam Darnold is a good play for this week. And I think of the quarterback options that you have out there, I think that Darnold is a good play. I would definitely play him in this week 3 coming up. I really think that, against Houston, it is a good defense, but at the same time, really like what Kevin O'Connell is doing with this offense, and I think Darnold is a good safe play that you can put out there, and it's not going to hurt you too much. Geno Smith is another one that I like against Miami. I don't really foresee the same numbers of production on the offense that was put up last week from Buffalo against Miami, but at the same time, Geno Smith seems to have found his rhythm back. I think the move to Ryan Grubb has really helped that offense out a lot, and I see Geno continuing to get his receivers involved, much like they did with New England against this Miami defense, which is, yeah, I got a lot of questions right now. So I do see a good game from Geno. I would probably prefer Geno over Darnold. And another guy to check out as well, I had mentioned in my video before that there's a good chance Bryce Young gets benched. And sure enough, very next day he did get benched. So now we have Andy Dalton in play. And I think Andy Dalton is a solid play, because he's not really going to give you anything elite. But if you do need a floor and you want to try to minimize mistakes, I think Andy Dalton would do that. I'm not expecting anything crazy. I think that I would anticipate 10 to 15 points, but you really need a quarterback, sometimes you got to go to guys like Andy Dalton. So, for example, if you're looking at Caleb Williams or Andy Dalton, I would probably prefer Andy Dalton right now until Caleb Williams can kind of show a little bit more. So those are some of the tough calls that you may need to make if you're looking at down the barrel of potentially going 0-3. And yeah, you might have to make some ugly plays like this. Running backs that I like. So first of all, I did not get to touch on Cam Akers and the injury situation to Joe Mixon. That game was going on at the time when I made my last video, but Joe Mixon is out, and now Damian Pierce is out. So yes, we're turning to Cam Akers, who is coming off an Achilles injury and has been very underwhelming in fantasy thus far throughout his career, but he is a talented running back. And heading into this situation in a good Texans offense, he is projected to get a large bulk of the carries. Minnesota has a good defense, but at the same time, they allowed Jordan Mason to rush for 100 yards and a touchdown. So you, if you say that Cam Akers has the potential to do something like that, then you would definitely want to play him. Cam Akers right now is less than 30% rostered and definitely want to grab him. He would be a number one ad among the flex positions if he is out there and you need somebody to play for this week. Other guys that I like at the running back position, keep an eye on Deonta Foreman. I would not play him per se unless you really need a running back, but there's a good chance that he could be somebody to take over the Browns' backfield. If you look at the carries distribution, he had 14 carries versus 7 for Jerome Ford this past week. Would not play Foreman right now, but he would be my next guy that I'd want to have on my team just to stash. Potential plays, you could look at Samaje Perine for Kansas City. He would be my number 2 guy that I would play after Cam Akers if he is out there. Samaje Perine is also under 30% rostered. And I think that what you may see in this situation is Kansas City is going up against better competition in Atlanta. There's a good chance that they could get the passing game involved with the running backs. I am skeptical on Carson Steele, how he'll do in this first performance as the lead back of this team. I think that more likely what will happen is you'll have a lot of time shares with these running backs. There's going to happen, and especially when Kareem Hunt gets involved, you're going to see some more of him. But I do think Samaje Perine is going to get involved in some receptions in this game, and I think he's a solid play if you're just looking for a baseline flex running back, especially in PPR. And then Rico Dowdle, another situation to monitor because the Dallas Cowboys rushing attack has not been great with Zeke Elliott, and Rico Dowdle gives you the ability to he's a guy that I like going into the season. He has not shown much so far, but based on how Dallas's rushing attacks looks, they may want to change things up, and Dowdle is somebody to stash right now just to kind of see what happens with that, because there is potential moving forward that could be a great play. Wide receivers. So this is my number 2 pickup on the week after Cam Akers, but if Jawan Jennings is available, definitely want to grab him and play him this week because San Francisco, they're going to need a lot. They do have Brandon Ayuk, but they do not really have much else besides that in the receiving game with George Kittle now being out in addition to Deebo Samuel. Jawan Jennings is somebody that I like to be able to get involved. I'm not expecting a huge game, but I think he does give you a consistent floor of about 12 to 18 points, which is going to be sufficient if you're just looking for that second flex player or something like that you need to plug in for this week. And then also keep an eye, there's been a lot of buzz on DeMarcus Robinson, who I've talked about before on this channel, but also keep an eye on Tyler Johnson and Josiah Whittington on the Rams, because Whittington is more of a slot player and he may actually fill up quite a bit of targets that Cooper Kupp used to have. And Tyler Johnson has been on this team for a minute too and is familiar with this system. So you might want to keep an eye on both these guys and just kind of see how they do, because I think that Whittington is more likely of the two to have some points in this game, but they're both solid players to stream and kind of see what happens for this week. Same thing with the Carolina Panthers. You want to take a look at Xavier Legette and Adam Thielen as well. Both of them have been extremely underwhelming, but they have likely been dropped if they even were rostered in the first place, and could have a good game this week against Las Vegas. They're not players that I would want to throw out there, but if you're in very deep leagues like 20-team PPR and stuff like that, then you may want to consider putting in Xavier Legette just as to kind of throw in, or Adam Thielen to give you some of those points you need off the floor level. Jalen Tolbert, who I've talked about before from the Dallas Cowboys, is still under 30% rostered, and if he's available, you like seeing 9 targets, potential that he could try to replicate that. That would be a very risky play, but it would be something I'd be willing to do. I like him over these Rams and Carolina Panthers receivers that I just mentioned. And then Andre Ayosivas from the Bengals, 2 touchdowns last week. I'd like to see a little more volume from him to trust playing him, but if you're really in a pinch, I think that he's a solid play against a poor Washington defense. And then at the tight end position, so two guys. The guy that's getting the buzz right now is Britton Strange from the Jags, and he did have 6 targets last week, which I like. But the two players that I actually kind of like more going into week 3 is Zach Ertz against Cincinnati. You've seen volume from him multiple weeks for Washington, and I think that they're just going to continue to try to get him involved. And then another guy that's very underrated, who I think is going to have a great week, is Jonnu Smith from Miami. I could very well see him getting at least 10 PPR points in a full PPR league because Skylar Thompson is a much more limited quarterback than Tua, and he's going to throw it a lot to running backs, throw it a lot to tight ends. I see Jonnu Smith getting involved. He's a not pretty ugly play, but if you really need a tight end, I think that's a great place to start. So I would go Smith, Ertz, and then Strange would be my next one. And then another guy just to keep an eye on as a hypothetical is Saubert from San Francisco. Let me just double check what his first name is. But he is going to be filling in for George Kittle, and his name's Eric Saubert. But he's going to be filling in for George Kittle, and if they run the same offense, then that could lead to some involvement for him to get some receptions. Again, it's really gross, but if you really need a tight end, it's not a bad option to consider. But you'd have to be real desperate to go to him. I would try those other 3 guys first, and if they're not available, then consider Eric Saubert as a last case scenario. And then defenses that are still less than 30% roster that would be great plays this week. Green Bay, who I've talked about, they're playing Tennessee, which is just going to create a lot of turnover opportunities. And then Las Vegas, didn't like them as much as if Bryce Young would be there, but Las Vegas against Carolina, still going to be a pretty good defense to throw out there and stream. All right, so we're going to answer some fan mailbag questions. So first from Dylan O'Shea, thank you for commenting. He had a couple questions in my community tab comment. First is asking about Derek Carr. How long will he stay hot? So I think that Derek Carr is going to stay hot for the foreseeable future. I don't like him as a rest of season. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's on the fringe of 10 to 15. But at the same time, he's going to have some poor games at times. But I think there's a real difference that's made by having Clint Kubiak now as the offensive coordinator, that generally he's going to go out there and put up some good performances. He is definitely a rosterable quarterback now. I do not see him slowing down anytime soon, but I do think that this is a good opportunity. If you do get a good trade offer for a better quarterback, I would try to do that. So for example, let's say Jaden Daniels has a bad week and Derek Carr has a good week. I would definitely try to trade Derek Carr for Jaden Daniels. But I do think he is a decent quarterback to roll rest of the season that you can rely on and give you a good floor. Next question from Dylan was, will Sam Laporta and Detroit's offense improve? So second part of the question, Detroit, yes. First, I do think Sam Laporta will get better, but I think we have to just move past the idea that Sam Laporta was a late second, early third round pick. I think just the volume is just not going to be there, I don't believe. So sadly, I think Laporta is going to kind of be a depreciating asset throughout the season for that reason, because especially now with the breakout of Jameson Williams, I just think that there's too many variables that would have to get Laporta involved and get significantly more volume for him to really be a guy that you really like. I think he's going to still finish this season as, a top 7 tight end. I don't really have any doubts about that. But at the same time, I think that I would still prefer guys like Brock Bowers, to be honest, because of the volume that you're getting. And I think that the move with Laporta right now is, unless you can get somebody like him, you just have to hold him and just hope that things get better. But I do think that Detroit's offense as a whole is going to continue to improve throughout the season. Not super worried about them so far, but don't make any panic moves to get rid of Sam Laporta unless you're significantly upgrading at tight end. Next question was, would you start Brian Thomas Jr. or the Rams wide receiver Demarcus Robinson? So this is a tough call because I do think Demarcus Robinson is going to have a lot of opportunity in this game to be the wide receiver 1, but that also scares me that there is the potential to have three different guys all get targets on that team that are all kind of in a similar caliber of receiver. Robinson is the most familiar with the system relative to the three of them. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. just gives you better upside. So personally, I would go Brian Thomas Jr. just because I think that there's a better chance that he gets a touchdown. And I really like his potential to emerge as a wide receiver one in Jacksonville. Um, but I think if you want to play it more conservative, you go Robinson. But if you're in a situation where um, you're projected to finish relatively close to your opponent or you're behind, I would go Brian Thomas Jr. because I think you just get a much higher upside potential with him. Next question. So these are comments now from my last video. LHB428 asks if you should start Derek Carr, who's playing Philadelphia, Geno Smith against Miami, or Justin Fields for the Chargers. So the way I would rank these is just as you ordered it: Carr, then Geno, then Fields. Starting with Fields, he's looked good this season, but he's playing a solid defense against the Chargers. I want to see how he does in that. And you're not really liking his rushing upside that he's given you so far this season. So I still rank him third. Geno, I would rank second, and then Carr, good matchup against Philly. And kind of like Dylan's question, I think you got to keep riding him as long as he's playing like this. Next question, which is from Cisarn 8712. Let me just make sure I pronounce that correctly. Caesar N. Okay, sorry. I'm guessing your name is Caesar, but I do apologize. Caesar N. 8712. He's in a 20-man PPR, which is huge league. I have a lot of respect for people that play in leagues like that. Josh Allen, Jalen Warren, Charbonnet, CD, Devonta Smith, Bowers, Lockett, and Boswell are his primary roster players. He's saying that he's like to improve his running backs, and he's wondering what moves he should make. So, first of all, in this situation, if you're in a 20-team league, I would be trying to stash those elite handcuff guys like Jalen Wright, like Jamal Williams, Braylon Allen, if he happens to still be out there. Pick up guys like that because at the rate these injuries are happening, you have potential lottery tickets on your team. If you're looking for guys to just start for this week, Cam Akers, who we just talked about, I would still play Charbonnet over him. I would play Cam Akers over Jalen Warren. So if I were you, Caesar, I would try to pick up Cam Akers and play him over Jalen Warren if he happens to be out there. That could be your RB2. Charbonnet is in a good situation right now given the injuries to Kenneth Walker that I think you could play him comfortably against Miami and he should have a lot of opportunity. Fantasy football guy. He had a trade question about whether or not he should trade Patrick Mahomes, T. Higgins, and Brian Robinson for Josh Allen and Zay Flowers. So it's a very interesting trade. And I do think that that trade would upgrade you significantly at quarterback, getting Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes, as well as getting Zay Flowers over T. Higgins. And I believe that trade was later upgraded to be Brian Thomas Jr. instead of T. Higgins, which I still like Zay Flowers over him rest of the season as well. But the biggest thing to me is that Brian Robinson is going to be, I think he's going to be an incredibly underrated fantasy football asset this season. Washington is going to run the ball a lot. He's also a very underrated player that is not broken out yet, but I could very well see a path to him becoming a top 15 running back rest of the season. And I think just given all the running back injuries that we've had so far, you have to continue to have RB depth that you can build upon. And this owner that he was trying to trade with, I guess, was unwilling to give him a running back. And at that point, I would look for something else because I think that even though it does upgrade your quarterback and wide receiver, you don't want to lose a great running back like that for no running back at all, in my opinion. So I would not make that trade. Okay, it's Frank Ncio has a question about whether or not you sell J.K. Dobbins or Kyron Williams right now. And I think if you're looking at what you can get, I would try to sell J.K. Dobbins because J.K. Dobbins has played great so far this season, looking like an excellent running back, top 5 rest of season, but this guy does have an injury history, and I don't think that that's something that we could ignore with him. So if you can somehow turn him into an elite running back, even if it's somebody like Isaiah Pacheco, who's going to be injured, but presumably come back in 6 weeks whenever his injury heals. Because if you're in a position where you're 2-0 right now, you're already starting to think towards the playoffs. And I think if you can get a really good return for J.K. Dobbins, I would consider doing that. Pacheco might be a little bit much by himself. If I was in that situation, I would try to get Pacheco plus a receiver that you can play consistently in the flex or higher. Um, but what I'm saying is that you can probably get elite return for J.K. Dobbins, and I would be all over trying to do that. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that's a, that's in play considering how he's looked. Christian McCaffrey, even with his injury, I would still do that. So yeah, I think that J.K. Dobbins is somebody that you could probably get more for, and plus Kyron Williams to me, I think that he's going to have an uptick in volume, especially in terms of targets, given the injuries to Cup and Puka, that I think make him valuable. And he has not had the type of performances thus far as J.K. Dobbins. So I just think the market for Dobbins is better right now in terms of what you can get and capitalizing on where you drafted him. Yamaz, 8613 ask if you should trade Travis Etienne and Tank Dell for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that would be a trade that you would definitely want to make. If you're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're getting a top 5 wide receiver. And I know he did hurt his knee. It looks like he had an MCL injury potentially, but I don't think that this is going to be any risk for him rest of season. You saw last week he got 19 targets. If somebody is still willing to sell Amon-Ra St. Brown for that, I don't think that Travis Etienne and Tank Dell amount to anything close to the value that you can get with St. Brown. And one of the things I'm going to talk about with my strategy video that I have coming up is that you really want to prioritize having the elite wide receivers on your team, because those are the positions that don't get hurt as easily. And if you can really just lock up your wide receiver 1 and 2 with 2 elite guys, running backs will cycle throughout the season in terms of which ones you can rely upon due to injuries, and you can play the waiver wires smartly and pick up some great running backs. But if you have those wide receivers locked in every week, you have no hesitation about who to start or sit because you're just going to put 2 elite guys out there. That's about as good as you can get in fantasy football in terms of setting yourself up for success. Which leads me into this next question is, would you trade Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brock Bowers for CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Kincaid? So I have said that I really like Brock Bowers, and I said that you should try to get him on your team. But if you're getting CeeDee Lamb, I know that Kincaid has disappointed this season, but CeeDee Lamb is arguably the 101 rest of season with Christian McCaffrey's injury and Tua's injury on the Dolphins. So if this guy is willing to give you probably the best asset in fantasy football right now for Brock Bowers, then of course you do that. All of this stuff is relative. The way I kind of equates the way you play fantasy football in a sense is kind of like how you play Monopoly. Everybody's trying to go for that boardwalk position, and you want to set yourself up to get the best cards in the game. Granted, in Monopoly, there's a lot of other strategies involved. Do you really want the blues, or do you want the light blues, or however you play that? There's different people do different things, but from the essence of you want to have the best cards in the game, kind of like in fantasy football, you want to have the best cards in the game, and CeeDee Lamb is one of the best cards. So yep, you're giving up Brock Bowers, and you're giving up Marvin Harrison, who I also really like, but you're getting one of the best players in fantasy football, and a tight end, Kincaid, that a lot of people feel could be a top 2 or 3 tight end rest of season from draft day. So yeah, this is a huge win, and if you can make that deal, I would definitely try to do that. So that's all I got for the video today. Comment in the pinned comment that I'm going to make in this video if you want to have your questions answered, and yep, we'll go from there. Good luck this week in week 3, and we'll be back with a recap, early waiver wire, and buy sell heading into week 4 coming up Sunday night, Monday morning. So stay tuned for that. All right, have a good night. Talk to you guys next time.